Subject matter is the dhikr protected? Quite a few questions that I've prepared. There have been an overwhelming number of questions that have been fired out by people from different backgrounds. On the most extreme end are the Qur'aniyun, those that reject the Sunnah, the Hadith, say that the revelation is purely divine from Allah in Allah's words, and the Hadith is not revelation.
Just run down that and then we'll go point.
Okay, so and there are some that just say that basically the Hadith, in areas where the Quran has mention, and then they'll be verified by Hadith, fine. Or if, let's say, there's a Quranic quotation on some issue, if the Hadith mentions on that issue and elaborates further, then it's Hadith. If there is a mention of Hadith and there's no mention of that issue in the Quran, then it's completely, you should reject that Hadith. So the questions that I've got together will...
so there's not only one school, there are various schools, various sub-schools and various attempts to get out of the problem, which has no solution.
Exactly. So some of the questions I have quite a few. So
argument is that
Quran is protected, it is a dhikr, because it's transmitted in the Tawatur chain. It was done so because it was memorized and it was recorded. Memory and it was written down and passed down. The immediacy taken in writing the Quran was, as soon as it was revealed, it was written down, as opposed to Hadith, as some claim that it was recorded 100 or 200 years later. The Quran has been explicitly protected by Allah, as it is mentioned in the Quran that we have protected this dhikr. This is not the case with the Hadith, as the Hadith has, not all Hadith is narrated in the Tawatur chain. Some of the Hadith has a broken chain. There are variations in Hadith in terms of some Hadith with different chains have slightly different wording sometimes. Some of them are not complete. Even when you look at, which is claimed, when you look at Mutawatir Hadith, there is dispute between the Sunni and the Shia schools that they say, well, actually, this is Mutawatir, and it says this, and the Shia will argue that. Okay. The first 13 years of the revelation, hardly any, if any, Hadith was recorded.
Okay. There's plenty of recorded, but it's not very relevant for fiqh and law.
Okay. Then we go on to the second points, which are the Prophet ﷺ in his speech is never questioned. However, who and what is questioned is the narrations and the narrators. Now, the narrators are human beings, okay, and Allah has protected this dhikr. If we're claiming that the Sunnah is a part of the dhikr, a man is not ma'asum, so he can make a mistake. Even if he is completely trustworthy and he's credible, he can make a mistake. The other issue is that the narrators, they themselves have their own agendas. Everyone by their
partisanship.
They have partisanship.
Tribalism, all kinds, racism.
People always have a stance. People can never be unbiased.
Sure.
So them taking a hadith and then transmitting that hadith, it could also be with an agenda, whether knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah.
The wordings of hadith and the meanings of hadith, there are some of the scholars that are Sahabi that hold to the point that a hadith should be narrated word for word as it was revealed or told by the Prophet. Some will just say it in terms of as long as the meaning is transmitted.
Sahabi and after the Sahabi until today. Yeah. Both schools exist. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, and the other thing is, well, there's some more points. When you're taking some hadith, and I think the example that I'm going to give here is Ibn Abbas, as an example, was presented with a document, a hadith, that was
from Ali.
And
he said, only a part of it is correct, the rest cannot be.
Exactly. And then he literally wet his fingers and he erased it with his fingers. That generally creates and raises doubts about documentation of hadith.
Should be the opposite, but let's carry on. Carry on.
Well, let me mention some of the points.
All these points backfire against the guys.
Okay, well, let me mention the points first. So the points here that I mentioned. That
Mishi did not read that Umar did, that he prevented some from that. Read all of them. It's very important.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Just read them without mercy, all of them. And the more you read them, the more is the better. Why you are saying you are sparing me from these? Okay? All of them. Yeah. All of them. All of them done.
Okay, so if we stick to the issue of Ibn Abbas erasing,
that's one. And
it creates doubt. I mean, you're talking about.
We'll discuss that. I did erase it with the first.
Okay, fine. The issue of Sayyid Umar, he forbade many of the Sahabi from transmitting hadith, even when Abu Hurairah was asked.
He maybe beat him up, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next point. Yeah.
Okay, next point. Generally, the munafiqeen. You can't open up someone's heart and say if they're sincere and trustworthy or not.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's many of this of the munafiqeen present. Generally, touching upon the issue of political agendas. The issue of Muawiyah.
We said that is all kinds of agenda, political. Maybe someone in love with a beautiful woman and he narrates in her favor. All of that's possible, yeah? Carry on.
Okay, fine.
We know all of that. That's no problem. Carry on.
Chinese whispers. I mean, when I say Chinese whispers, in terms of in the chain of narrators, when you have a gathering, let's say Zuhri had a gathering, he could have a gathering of thousands and thousands of people. Now, they never had speakers or microphones, so they would have to have relay people. So, it is possible, definitely, and this is why people like Abu Hanifa rejected and never accepted anybody who narrated from a relay chain. They would have to hear it from the person themselves.
Absolutely, but at that time of Hanifa there was no relay chains of any relevance. But we will come to
there
that.
Was, I mean, he says...
No, later. It was in time of Bukhari. And there's already books which are written down. But no problem. We'll discuss that. Okay, carry on. That's all fine. So the people, how desperate are the people to do all of that?
Okay, fine. The issue of, when you're looking at Sahih Muslim, for example, for the Sunni Muslims, it is the strongest source.
Or one of the strongest.
Or one of the strongest source. It is accepted, at least. But they're all authenticated hadith. Whereas you have certain hadith...
There's some criticism of some of the hadith there.
Okay. Yeah. But for the layman like myself, for example, when you pick up a hadith and it says that Allah created the world in 7 days...
We know it's wrong. Yeah,
it's wrong.
Yeah. And the scholar did detect that in the past, and it has been analysed and discussed. We discussed that also, no problem.
But
meaning some hadith are not acceptable and they contradict. Yeah, absolutely, no problem. He did not deny that.
Okay.
60 cubits.
Okay. Is there any evidence, or there is no evidence in the Quran for the issue of isnad or testimony or ahad hadith or mutawatir?
We will go to that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, mustalah. There's no evidence of that. That's a claim. Also the issue of mutawatir or tawatir. Is there a definition for that? Is it 3? Okay. Is it 300 as in?
No problem. Carry on. Yeah.
Okay. Losing hadith. The Muwatta Imam Malik was 2 volumes. Now we only have 1. Have we lost?
That's not true. That's just no. It's not lost.
Okay, it's not lost.
We have all narration. 4 narrations of Muwatta. They are the same. Maybe one narrator differ from the other by 2 or 3 hadith out of several thousand.
But it's claimed by the people who transmitted it.
Some people claim that originally Malik has the Muwatta very big, and then slowly he removed the hadith from it and dictated. But this is not evidenced by the Muwatta in our hand by the trustworthy narrator. Someone imagined that from his sick fantasy. If they take sick fantasies and evidence, that's a real problem. But we'll come to all of that.
Okay.
We'll show that what they are saying is also a sick fantasy by itself.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
And let me see. I think you've covered virtually all the points. Yeah, there are some of the muhaddithin. Again, I'll use the example of Imam Abu Hanifa, that they will reject hadith that were not rooted in reality. I.e., if it sounds a little bit too much of a make-believe story, then they will reject it.
Perfectly fine. This is a way of analyzing a hadith also. We'll come to that.
But then when you're looking at the Quran and you're looking at Surah Al-Kahf for people to see for 300...
Then you have to reinterpret it if you think it's contradicting reality, then you do interpretation. We'll come to that also.
Okay, fine. Also, issue of hadith. We accept that the Quran is completely without any dispute and the hadith needs to be verified. But then you have certain scholars, some of these muhaddithin, these jurists, who say that the hadith can abrogate Quran.
It is a matter of abrogating of hukm, not hadith abrogate Quran, meaning a matter of text. But we'll discuss that.
And generally, I think the final point here is just generally there are quite a few verses in the Quran, and that might be a good starting point, but there's quite a few verses in the Quran where it says Allah has sent Muhammad purely as one who delivers the message. That's it. His only job is to literally take the message and just to give it.
Not only.
Nothing else.
That's not true. That's not true.
But there are quite a few evidences which they use.
No, but the evidences are against them, all of them. First of all, they mention many stories about Ibn Abbas, Ismail, are listening to us? So they mention many stories about Ibn Abbas raising a considerable amount of what has been reported to Ali ibn Abi Talib as fatwas. They mentioned also that Umar has rebuked and beaten up some Sahaba even for narrating too much, or told them not to narrate too much. And it has been reported that he told the one going to the remote areas, just get the people busy with the Quran, don't narrate too much from the Prophet, etc., etc. Yeah? They mentioned that. And obviously the Shia used this narration against Umar that he wanted to undermine the Sunnah, which would expose him as a Zurba, all of that. And they mentioned that what they said about the Quran being immediately written down when it is revealed and so on. Now I'm wondering where they got that. Can you find me an ayah in the Quran which said write it down when it is revealed? Is there any ayah saying you have to write it down? No. It says you read it as we read it to you, and for us it's to collect it, and there's nowhere writing is mentioned. So this writing is narrated by some kind of a hadith, also some isnad. So we have to doubt that too also.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have to doubt also that it has been written. And the story of Ibn Abbas is also fabricated. It's unreliable because we don't have. Do you have a video of Ibn Abbas doing that? Do we know the shape of Ibn Abbas and how his beard looked? It is all narrated the same way. Amazingly, those who claim the Sunnah is protected, like myself, they say the Sunnah of the Prophet is protected because of the divine promise in a metaphysical way. But what Ibn Abbas did or did not do is not Sunnah. So it's maybe not protected. So it's very well possible that the people could fabricate against Ibn Abbas metaphysically, from a philosophical point of view, because Allah is not obliged to protect the narration of Ibn Abbas or his fatwa, or protect the action of Umar and his fatwa. They are not Sunnah. They are not an infallible Sunnah to be protected until Yawm al-Qiyamah. He obliged himself, according to my theory, to protect only the Sunnah. So if they accept stories about Ibn Abbas and Umar, which are also narrated because they were not written to their time, we do not find stone tablets engraved in their time. And even if they are engraved in time, I will show that, like, for example, King Ramses did resolve many temples and put his name on them. They are built before him, as we know by radiation dating. So the man was so greedy, he was not happy to have his own temples and artifacts, which were quite numerous and enormous at his time. He even went to old temples and erased the old names and put his own name. So that could happen also. And it can be proven by forensic methods thousands of years after. Secondly, the Quran is him itself. We did not find a mountain with the side of it nicely polished and the Quran engraved on it by fire coming from heaven. So it's miraculously preserved. That's not the way it's preserved. The way it was preserved, as it's narrated, partly inside the Quran, but outside. The narration about how the Quran is recorded is outside the Quran. It is about the Quran, not in the Quran. They say the moment a revelation comes, original Prophet was concerned that he will forget, so he when he is receiving the revelation, while he is still in the state of unease, receiving the revelation and sweating and so on, he moving his tongue with it so the people around him can receive it, and that's the narration. That's the narration. It's not Quran saying that. The Quran pacified his man, said, don't accelerate with your tongue repeating it in fear of losing it. Don't be in a hurry to give it to the people in fear that you may forget it. إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا جَمْعَهُ وَقُرْآنَهُ. On us, Allah is supposed to be speaking the Quran. We are now very neutral. We don't claim even the Quran is from Allah. So Allah is supposed to say the Quran. That's the neutral way to work. If we are objective, we should not say Allah says in the Quran, because we have not proven that yet it's a Quran. It's from Allah yet. That's what the Quran has to deal with that first. So the one who wrote the Quran, who claimed to be Allah, or the one who revealed or composed the Quran, better composed, because we don't know if it was written first or how it did come in the first place, except from this questionable narration, possibly questionable narration, says, إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا جَمْعَهُ. On us is to collect it and to read it, not to write it. قُرْآنَهُ. Quran, قرأ, reading. It's on us. After that, the narration says, the narration, not the Quran. The Prophet was at ease, he remained silent until the wahy is gone. He wipes his sweat. He wakes up because he's almost like in an unconscious state. Most of the time, sometimes it is not like that. And then he dictates to the people around him, and they say that he dictates usually to few Sahaba around him, usually a big number, which will be an authority by itself, ayah by ayah. Because usually one ayah or a small number of ayahs is revealed. Very rarely a complete surah or a big surah is revealed. Although some claims that Surah Al-An'am or it was revealed in one go, we don't know. But so they call it star by star or lot by lot. And then whoever is present, as that's also narration, that's not in the Quran. You know when the Quran mentioned the shoulders or the palm tree leaves or the skins which or the stone plates or the tablets which were at hand, whatever was at hand, even a broken piece of what you call porcelain, they will use it and write to the back of it. Whatever. Some people even take their shoe, turn it up and write it and keep it until they go home and put it again in a clean version. Write whatever is available of material. And that's also narration outside the Quran. It is written. Yeah. So that was done this way is narrated by narrations of so-called Sunnah. We don't have a video at the time recording that. We don't have an MP3 recording at the time, and we don't have enough verification and cross-referencing to be sure that this video is not fabricated by itself. Because we have nowadays videos which are fabricated. And we have, mashallah, Photoshop, which can put your head in a pornographic movie and make you a pornographic hero. We know that. It has happened to some French presidents. And some pornography was around with the head of the president on another body. The only thing that the president could have done is to go naked and show that's not my body for sure. But he didn't do that, and the story is not settled until today. Maybe he was the one, we don't know. Anyway, I'm just joking. So we didn't have at that time, so we are relying on narrations. At that time, writing was not very common. Except we know the Quran was quietly written, and there were many, from the narrations again, there were many narrations which reason dictates that it's impossible that all people have agreed to fabricate them in one go to make that the Quran is valid. So that the Quran was written, that were many masahib, but many people are ignorant about that. Even the Quran, if they ask them what are the first masahib, they will tell the first mushaf is Mushaf al-Uthman. Most of them will tell you, but that's not true. The first standard mushaf was the one collected by in the time of Abu Bakr and left by Hafsa, but it's not only the only mushaf. There were many masahib at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And all major readers have their own mushaf, or private mushaf, so to say. So what Abu Bakr did, according to the narration again, not from the Quran does not tell the story about itself. Otherwise it will be self-referencing circularity. It's impossible. This narration tell us that Abu Bakr collected on advice of Umar, his collection, meaning he made a standard master copy of the Quran which was kept by Hafsa. Why by Hafsa? Not because she's the daughter of Umar, not because he wanted to undermine Ali's position like the Shia claim. For the simple reason, she's the only one who could read and write of the wives of the Prophet. She's the only literate one. All the other were illiterate, including the great Aisha. Aisha was illiterate. She could not read and write like Hafsa. All others were illiterate. Illiteracy was very rampant in Arabia at the time. So the only who could read and write was, so if someone comes and wants to check his own private mushaf against the master copy, the reference copy at Hafsa, then Hafsa can read herself and double check his. If she's not a reader, it will not be making any sense to keep the Mus'haf in her custody. So she kept the Mus'haf in her custody, and from this Mus'haf, further copies were copied and sent to the major cities of the Muslim world at the time of Uthman, but not sent alone, sent with a reader, one who is very eloquent and who has to be a Qurayshi, so he will make the pronunciation according to the Quraysh pronunciation, because the issue at Uthman time was the different pronunciation and variations in the pronunciation. So it doesn't help to send just a copy of the Quran. A dead copy will do nothing. It must be a human being going with it, reading to the people according to the pronunciation of Quraysh, so that all people will pronounce the same way, the same dialect. That was the job of Uthman, unifying the reading and the dialects. The time of Abu Bakr was having a master copy of the ultimate Quran as it has been finalized without any abrogation. Because some of the verses of the Quran has been abrogated before. The Quran self-testifying itself that some verses have been abrogated, and Allah promised that if a verse is abrogated, another verse equal or even more eloquent will be revealed. So there's no loss or no harm. Or the one who composed the Quran promised. You cannot say Allah yet until you prove the Quran from Allah. So so all these surrounding issues are from historic evidences, which are essentially narrations. The same like the Sunnah, with narration chains and so on. Some of them broken, some were not broken, etc. So, without taking this narration on board, you will be at dark how the Quran. You will have just a book in front of you. We don't know what has happened 1,400 years back. All what you know with certitude is that we have some copies going from the year 200 something. And that's exactly what J. Smith and guys are trying to do. But it doesn't work, because we know by necessity that book like that in that composition cannot be could not have been written at that time exactly, because there were thousands and millions of copies and they were all identical. And that's what the Germans did before the World War. They collected all copies of the Quran, new and old, trying to find any discrepancy which can be traced back to some discrepancy. They concluded, except few spelling mistakes here and there by some writer, which can happen, and they excluded that. Maybe a copy is missing few pages because they have been eaten by termites, but if we compare all copies, we must assume that the Quran has not suffered any change since the earliest time of its writing, which goes back to some copies at hand goes up to the 2nd century. Maybe some older now have been found in Yemen. So, but necessity of reason dictate that it could not have been emerged out of nothing, nor could have people from Andalusia all the way to China have been sitting and meticulously fabricating the identical Quran. So it must be going back to something, a source which it seems to be other narration claim that it's coming from a guy called Muhammad living in Mecca and claiming to be a messenger. That's the way it works from our time. For that time we are not there. We are relying on narration. So an attempt to discredit all narration means you are discrediting history, you are in the dark. Except that you can say, all what you can say, this book seems to be in a sense going back to a guy called Muhammad. That's all we can say. But that's not what the Quran are saying. They're shooting themselves in the foot. And this way they will undermine all the necessity of reason. So that's number one. So if they say these narrations are all in summary, that some narration are, we know that human beings could be biased, could be telling lies, could be fabricating a hadith, could be mistaken. That's all possible. But does not mean that it's the standard case. The standard case is that human beings are accurate in their narration. Inaccuracy comes as an extra event. Evidence for that is that all lively transactions we do on a daily basis assume that we are doing our things we are doing basically correct. There will be mistakes and they will be detected and corrected. When we go to the medical doctors, we assume that the diagnosis is correct. Does not mean that the doctor doesn't make wrong diagnosis. He does, but the basic assumption from a qualified doctor, even a qualified doctor, usually how do we know he's qualified? Because there's a certificate from the state. But there are a few doctors who have sneaked with false certificates. We know that. From time to time you get a scandal in the media. But does not mean the certification process is unacceptable. It's a correct one. It's a solid one. But it's not an infallible one. So that the process is infallible, being not infallible, does not mean that it's unreliable. It can be relied upon. It is the standard. But there will be exceptions. The purpose of scholarship of hadith or of medical verification of medical certificates or of examination of medical doctors or examination of engineers, the purpose of examination and testing, etc., is to weed out the wrong and inappropriate cases out of the masses. And this process itself is also not infallible. So from the process there will be some people sneaking also, but it will be minimal. So the basic assumption, if we go to England and find maybe how many medical doctors are in England, 10,000, 50,000 maybe, we can assume safely that maybe the fake doctors under them are maybe only 50 out of the 50,000. 1 in 1,000, maybe less. We can assume that very safely. The process is very weak. And we assume if we have a consultation of doctors, this doctor checks you and another one checks you and 4 or 5 checks you, and you come to the same diagnosis, we can have almost certitude that the diagnosis is correct. Because the process is self-correcting. There's a community of scholars or a community of practitioners in a certain area sufficiently big to verify that. The same apply with the hadith now. We apply that to the hadith. There were a number of Sahaba narrated by Tawatur and by history because they were fighting against the Romans and the Persians. Yes, mostly Bedouins from Arabia, but the leadership was the hand of the Sahaba. The Sahaba present in Badr, the dispute about the number, but everyone agrees that they are above 300 by all narrations, which are Tawatur. Also the one in Hudaybiyah by being 1,400, 1,200, 14, 1,500, but they were not 50. They were definitely in the 1,000 plus. That's by Tawatur also. The numbers is in the thousands. This is a community which is sufficiently, we cannot say that about Jesus ﷺ. He has only 12 disciples, one of them became a traitor. So the probabilities of mischief and change there is much higher. There was nobody close to him except these 12 and maybe a couple of women. And still we have some reliable narration despite that. But we have here thousands of people self-correcting from various tribes, various origins. So they will be watching each other correctly subconsciously. Not consciously, because they were not doubting each other, they were trusting each other. They were, so to say, weapons fellows. They are fellows of weapons together. So if you are together with your own co-fighter, fighting so many battles together, trusting each other, putting your life at stake with your brother around you, for some time there is a relation of trust. But the relation of trust is a relation of mutual watching. I watch that you don't make a mistake, I correct you, and you correct me. That's natural. And we know this generation had a very high level of forthrightness or narration. So yeah, maybe bits of narrations are fabricated, but the amount of narration showing their honesty and their devotion and their willingness to sacrifice and to fight is so overwhelming it cannot be all of it fabricated. Just ask the Romans when they been hammered by Islamic armies, how vicious and devoted were they Islam. Ask the Romans what they suffered in Mu'tah when they met only 3,000 Muslims with an army of 200,000. Yes, they won the battle and Khalid ibn Walid needed to retreat by night, but they suffered such losses that they have them really nightmares until they met them in Yarmouk and they were defeated, and met them in Ajnadin and they were defeated because of the shock of Mu'tah. The shock of Mu'tah made them so fearful that when they meet Muslims they shiver of fear.
Well, couldn't somebody say that, what's it called, you're saying that trustworthiness...
No, we're just saying the community. I'm just describing what the community was.
But that's based on the narration as well then?
No, but it's overwhelming narration. It is tawatur. It is history. Otherwise, even the Quran could be from the 3rd century. The Quran fabricated in the 3rd century.
Okay, no, I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'll give you that.
From that, this is by necessity of reason. Otherwise, you are not certain that you are, maybe you are not from Uganda, maybe you are from Benin, and people are lying to you.
Yeah, but...
For example.
Yeah. But
certain things
you say that they're self-correcting and they're watching...
No, I'm saying the community. I'm describing the community as known by tawatur. Now, the community is numerous. There are several thousand of Sahaba.
Yeah, which I'll give to you.
They are devoted. They are fighter. They are extreme in their love and devotion to their prophet. I said their prophet, not our prophet, because you don't establish that he is our prophet yet. I'm being very objective to the level of being nasty. Okay? All of that shows that the probability that one of them will fabricate outrageously and outrightly and others not correcting him, and one of them getting an agenda and running away with it and no other one correcting him is very small. That's what I'm saying. It's like the medical doctor community, that all their judgment cannot be just from their own whims. There's too many different characters devoted to the same cause, respecting the same prophet, that we have a rampant dishonesty there in that generation. We have few dishonest ones. We have few munafiqeen, but it is not the general characteristic. That's what I want to establish. No, I'm not establishing that they are infallible. Don't misunderstand me. That will be a mistake. It will backfire immediately. There will be mistakes. There will be even hypocrisy under them, as the Quran says clearly, which is self-justification. There is no doubt about that. But there is enough number of community there And these educated a generation of tabi'een, which is even bigger in number, because every Sahabi has several students under him. Quite a number of students devoted to him. Ibn Abbas has 20, 30 fully devoted to him. Abu Hurairah has 10, 15 fully devoted to him. Or did they narrate from others? And we have many tabi'een who narrate from many. So every companion has tens of students. So the number of Sahabi who are like they say that we call Sahabi, which are about 1,000 or something, the devoted one, the one who really established the whole Ummah and the whole state and demolished the two empires, the leaders, they, in the next generation, they breeded maybe 10, 15, 20,000 of Tabi'een. And that one breeded after the generation, after that, a similar number, because after that, the push and the devotion of the faith weakened. As the state gets well established and everyone is settled and wealth is spreading and people are busy with making money and establishing their beautiful houses and their livelihood and so on, the devotion of the Sahaba weakened definitely in the Tabi'een. So the number of the Tabi'een who learn from the Tabi'een is maybe stable around also 10, 15, 20,000. The significant big one of them are a few hundreds, but there are thousands of scholars and narrators and judges and military leaders, etc. Who are students of the Tabi'een, and these Tabi'een were students of the Sahaba. So we have a very solid, big scientific community. That has to be kept in mind. An enormously important scientific community. This scientific community has been narrating these stories, which some of them we have already mentioned, to establish the existence of the community, because we need to. This is not like self-referencing or self-contradictory, because one narrating about the others, other narrating about it. This is a community narrating about each other. It's not one narrating about himself, which could be doubted. It's many heads of different characters narrating about themselves, but others of them. So it is okay. Like the medical community can judge a new medical doctor and test him without we saying this is a faulty process, because it's not only one. They can judge themselves, meaning they judge another from the same group, but not everyone judging himself, judging the other from the same community. That's in any scientific community. Same for physics. How can we trust physics? Because the physicists criticize each other and develop physics further. Besides, the result of physics, which we see like in technology and so on, is obviously valid and we use it. Otherwise, we won't work. Cannot cheat us. Say the electronics and so on. The electronic equipment couldn't be possibly working if the theory is wrong. The theory is correct and the result of experimentation is correct. We see it in the computer. It's very clear. This is an evidence by practical result. Here we have the evidence in matter of the practicals. That what do we have then? We have this companion community narrating all these stories, which is especially for the companions their own life, their own immediate experience. Mostly. They narrate various things. They narrate, for example, events of history, maghazi and siyar, especially what the Prophet did in battles, in going there, traveling there. A lot of that is neutral. Someone could narrate some of the Prophet praised when in a battle campaign he met someone from tribe XYZ and he praised that XYZ tribe. If the one narrating that from the same tribe, we could say maybe he's praising his own tribe. Yeah. But more often than not, the one narrating the praise for a certain tribe actually from another tribe or maybe from another nation altogether. Like the one narrating the praise of the Persian, and that they will be the nation which will be striving for knowledge later. Arabs are narrating that, not Persian. When he said, if the knowledge would be, or the iman would be in the stars, people from another nation, when we read the ayah, if you don't carry the message, another people will be created who will carry the message. Who will be those who will replace us if we don't do? Say, the people of these, pointing to Salman al-Farisi. The narrator is not a Persian, he's an Arab. So that is not very much in his interest as an arrogant Arab to praise the Persian or declare him to be the substitute nation of. So this is one example where you see that the narration looks more trustworthy and reasonable, etc. But for that generation itself, which is own life experiences, most of the narration either historic events which are essentially neutral. Nobody is having interest to fabricate. Like we went in the battlefield, we met the enemy, XYZ were killed. Why fabricate that someone who's killed was not killed? There's no good reason for fabricating that. And we killed this and this from the enemy, and you see from the historic record that these guys disappeared completely from history after this battle, so they must have been killed in that battle. So there's no reason to fabricate that, these historic events. And that's the reason, although actually the isnad, technology of isnad, which is used by the other hadith in in narrating Sirah and Maghazi and so on, historic events, is less strict and demanding than that of Hadith. Nevertheless, the Orientalists accepted that as quite valid because of the consideration I mentioned, but because of another agenda. They accepted the Hadith as less valid because they have agenda in their mind. Let me mention the agenda quickly so that the Quran, you know which trap they are going in. The agenda where they rejecting Hadith and say the Hadith has been wholesalely fabricated. They bring some justification, technical justification, which we refute, inshallah, maybe if not today, another time, is that if the hadith about which is usually in the books of Sunan, which is usually about ahkam, because the hadith are not, they're not concerned about the timeline or events, although some hadith contain events about the battles and so on. They don't contain. They are seerah type of hadith, but the usual classification of the hadith books, especially the later one, Bukhari and Abu Dawud and the Sunan, etc., is to classify it according to fiqh sections. A book, a section about trade, a section about fishery, a section about slaughtering, a section about this and that, a section about tax collection, zakah collection, etc. You know that. About BAP. They looked at that. They found that Islamic fiqh already in the time of Abu Hanifa was so well developed. His students, Abu Yusuf and Muhammad bin Hassan, they have already big volumes of fiqh. Muhammad bin Hassan is regarded as the founder of international law. He has actually a statue in Switzerland in front of the headquarters of either the United Nations or some organization concerned with international law. Obviously, imaginary. We don't know how Muhammad bin Hassan looked, but it's Muhammad bin Hassan, the founder, because he wrote a Siyar al-Kabir, the founder of international law. So, such a volume of fiqh developed by Abu Hanifa and his students, taken from the Tabi'in, because Abu Hanifa himself is almost like Tabi'i. There's a claim that he saw Anas ibn Malik when he was a child. But most his knowledge is taken from Tabi'i, so he's Tabi'i. He's the same rank in the level of the third generation, let us say, because the first generation are Sahaba, or the subs are divided in various levels, very young Sahaba, big Sahaba, old Sahaba. The Tabi'in also divided very big Tabi'in. It's called Mukhadramin, those who reached Jahiliyyah but they didn't have the fortune to meet the Prophet. When they came to Medina, Prophet already died. So they were already adults but they did not see him, so they are not Sahaba, they are not companion. They could have been companion but they were not. And then another Tabi'in. And then the third generation like Malik, like Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa is a borderline, you could say, because he saw Anas ibn Malik, he is actually from the Tabi'in, not from Tabi'in. So he's older in generation than Malik, because Malik did not see any Sahabi whatsoever. We could say he's actually the same generation like Malik, third generation. Whatever it is, already fiqh is called. Huge body of fiqh there. It's a huge body of fiqh, volumes of fiqh, detailing all issues of marriage, divorce, trading, guarantees, lawsuits, massive fiqh. That fiqh relies mostly, as it claims, if you ask Abu Hanifa and Malik, he will bring you narrations. As it claims, relies on, it is taken, is taught by the Tabi'in. They were students of Hammad al-Kufi, etc., like Abu Hanifa. Malik himself is a student of the major scholars of Medina, etc., from these scholars, and these are taken directly from Sahaba, and they claim they have that mostly based on a hadith from the Prophet. So, that's what the Mustashriqeen did in their mind, in their twisted mentality. If we accept a claim that is based on these ahadith, meaning this volume of fiqh in its essence, not in the fine details, but in its essence, is coming back to Muhammad. They reduce it from his ahadith. And these ahadith are really correctly his ahadith. Then meaning this man is a phenomenon, an illiterate man in Arabia, Mecca, essentially a Bedouin. Yes, Mecca they are not Bedouins, they are settlement, but what kind of settlement? A backward settlement compared to the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire. Then we have no recourse except to say this man must be a prophet. There's no way. Where he got all this knowledge and this wisdom? There's no way. And we know from Muhammad, whatever we claim, that he met Bahira, the monk in Syria, which is a fabricated story, by the way, has no veracity whatsoever, can be refuted easily. And whatever we say met him half a day, in no way he could have read the Torah, nor he is reader, nor did he read the Talmud or the Gemara. He did not read anything of that. Whatever. He may have bits and pieces of stories here scattered, but that's all that he could have. And that's not enough to develop this body of thought. So we are stuck with a problem. If we admit that these hadith are valid, Muhammad is a prophet, there is no escape from this. Any man of proper understanding and respect of his mind and the law, if you ask a lawyer, he will tell you, for example, the common law of England developed over how many hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe, and was codified at the time of Queen Victoria, based on law practice 400, 500, 600 years. Until it came this maturity, and already Abu Hanifa is more mature than the common law. Already more mature than common law. In formulation and the extension. And the sophistication, philosophical depth. So we are stuck with this man. But we have decided, they said, we have decided that he is either a mentally deranged or a super liar. So what to do with this book, buddy? Solution is very clear. All these ahadith are wholesale fabrication. And this is so-called Islamic law is nothing than the local law, which is actually Jewish and Christian and Roman and Persian law. And they adopted that, formulated nicely, and then they fabricated a hadith and sent it back to their prophet to make him look nice. And give the hadith more authority. That's it. So the Orientalist, Gold Seer and Co. and Shakht are stuck with this contradiction. That for them, Seerah is valid because they have to make something valid. Otherwise, there is no historical Muhammad. There is nothing in history. History cannot be understood. Suddenly, few Bedouins came out, demolished two empires. So what's going on there? Can't be. So, and they claim there's a man called Muhammad. So there must be a man called Muhammad. There must be something odd in history. There must be some kind of miracle. Maybe God came down and fought with them. It has to be explained somehow. It doesn't work otherwise. And you know the nature of people and nations, and especially Arab Bedouins who are in that peninsula for thousands of years like that, of no relevance, suddenly become relevant and having a leader and give his name and his genealogy. It can't be fabricated by all these numbers. It's impossible. So Muhammad did exist. But Muhammad is not a prophet. We are not going to accept him as a prophet. Yeah. So we have to find explanation for all this body of the law. So this is nothing than Roman law actually, polished by the Muslims, and all the hadith are wholesale fabricated. Maybe few are not fabricated, but wholesale fabricated and put back. That's the reason they doubt the hadith. Not because there is any objective reason. From a technical point of view, from a narration objective, self-respecting, honest point of view, they should give the hadith more respectability than the seerah. Because the seerah and that is not usually narrated in the strict chains for various reasons. One of them is very difficult to do a strict chaining for a complex event like a complete battle campaign, because you have a bit here, a bit here. So the scholars from any time, they have put the story together and separated the chains from the body of the story, from any faith. But that doesn't mean the seerah is not reliable like many people and some Salafi think. Seerah is quite reliable in general. Yes, maybe that phrase is not reliable enough to be a source of law, but the whole picture is quite reliable. Why? Because in early phases, to encourage the soldier for fight, there were in every army a so-called qas, a storyteller. A storyteller, to encourage the student, will give them what the Sahaba did, what was in this battle campaign, how the Sahaba suffered in Mecca, etc. So he will give them seerah, will give maghazi, battle stories of the Prophet. So from early phases, there were maghazi being narrated and also written down. We have, for example, Urwa ibn Zubayr, who is a tabi'i, who is a student and the nephew of Aisha, and learned mostly at the hand of Aisha and many other great companions and middle-aged companions. He himself has his own seerah. He has a complete seerah. A short one, obviously, but he has his own seerah. We have the son of Uthman ibn Affan, Aban ibn Uthman, having his own seerah. So already tabi'een of middle-aged tabi'een, they have their own seerah. And then the next generation collected from these seerahs and other sources and put together like Ibn Ishaq and Musa ibn Uqba and other seerah writers. So the seerah is quite reliable. The only thing is that because we don't have the isnad for every bit and piece, sometimes we have, but more often than not we don't have, for that phrase we cannot deduce law reliably. While hadith is narrated, the whole hadith is not. Now to the issue of hadith narration, let's clarify historically, since we have established this is self-corroborating. We have thousands of Sahabis narrating a hadith, usually 1 or 2, 3 ahadith from their immediate experience. He saw the Prophet, for example, in the last pilgrimage, his farewell speech, and he narrated a bit of the speech. That's all that he narrated, maybe another story. We have some Sahaba who have plenty of narrations. From those, we have, according to the narration we have in our hand, we have what we have hand is narrations, like this recording of the Quran, the same level of trustworthiness or untrustworthiness. We have to scrutinize them. We have, for example, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. He's on record with over 2,000, maybe 2,500, don't remember the number now, of narrations. Narration meaning hadith, which is a bit, either it is a hukum or a comprehensive story. Usually it is 3-4 lines. Most of the time it's only one phrase, or two phrases, or 2 phrases, or 3 phrases related to each other. The Prophet had the habit, for example, to say, Allah prohibited 3 things, or 7 will go in the hellfire, or 7 will lead you to the paradise. Usually 3 or 7, because people memorize no more than 7, 10. He never mentioned 10 items in one go, because he was speaking only little but comprehensive. So the hadith is usually like that, 2-3 lines, 4 lines, 6 lines maximum. There are some very tall hadith, usually they have a very complex story, but normally they are this size. So these bits can be easily memorized. Abdullah ibn Amr al-As was writing down directly from the mouth of the Prophet. He narrates that himself. Someone could say this is fabricated. I understand. That could be also brought against that. No doubt about that. Could be brought. But we have nothing else to go back except these narrations. Like we have nothing to go back that the Quran was directly written on shoulders and plates and so on by such narrations. For in the case of Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, he himself narrated that, but not only himself. Abu Hurairah narrated that when he was criticized, saying nobody has so many narrations except because I was a poor man. I was not married at the time. I was living in the masjid, sleeping in the masjid, and since I was poor, I was sticking to the side of the Prophet ﷺ or the side of Bakr and Umar in the hope that I may have a lunch or a dinner. So I stuck to their side. The only one who has more narration, he thought has more, actually has more but better narrations, and Abdullah ibn Amr, because he was writing down, I was not writing. Abu Hurairah wrote later, he narrated that also. And also, he told that to Aisha. Aisha says him one day, at the time you were busy because you are a wife of the Prophet and you want to please him as a wife, you were busy with your comb and your beauty. I was not busy with anything, I was not beautifying myself. I have nothing to do else, except to stick to his side. So I narrate more. So how come that you have one narration? Say mother, because she's the mother of the mother, you were busy with your comb and your eyelashes. I have nothing to be busy with like that. He was very, very bold and frank. So he narrated that Abdullah ibn Amr was writing, and other Sahabi also narrating. So it's like tawatur. It may be not public tawatur, but it's in many aspects it's quite good. It's quite good. So Abdullah ibn Amr, if that story is reliable, was writing immediately. So you have several thousand hadith written immediately from the mouth of the Prophet directly. And now by Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, all of them are recorded. Abu Hurairah was sent by the Prophet together with Al-Ala ibn al-Hadrami to Bahrain to be, I think, his mu'adhin, or to be like his right hand. Most likely the Prophet wanted him to establish himself and gain some wealth and gain some livelihood. So he stayed in Bahrain. The time of Abu Bakr, and in the early time of Umar, he came back with considerable wealth. You know how Umar is and how he distrusts anyone with money. He said, what is this money? He said, this money I worked with some businesses, etc. I collected. I said, you enemy of Allah and enemy of His Messenger, you have looted the treasury. I said, I am not enemy of Allah and enemy of His Messenger, I am enemy of their enemies. This is my money, I will say. Umar said, no way, that cannot be. And he took his stick, beat up Abu Hurairah, took his money and put it in there. So Abu Hurairah said, I was bleeding in my back, praying in the morning, but said, may Allah forgive Umar. And he narrates a funny story later. A few months later, Umar came to see, what do you think about if I appoint you something? So no. I'm not going to appoint. I'm afraid of 3 and 2. Say, why do you think I'm afraid of 5? Say, no, because there are 3 and 2. And the 2 is that my money will be taken and beaten my back. I'm not going to. And the 3 that I may be unjust, that I may misjudge. This is the 3 of similarity. So 3 of a category, 2 of another category. And said, no, I'm not going. So he was in Medina. At that time, he recognized that he has to devote himself to scholarship, because he has beaten up, money is gone. Well, most of the money is gone. Most like Umar left was just bare bones. So we know from his own testimony and others that in the time of Medina, he learned reading and writing. He was illiterate before that. he memorized the Quran. He's a Quran memorizer, but not a time of Prophet later. Obviously, the Quran was settled, and we have the master Mus'haf of Hafsa, so we have his own Mus'haf to memorize the Quran. And then he decided to write down all from memory what he has memorized. So this is a few years back. We have also Jabir ibn Abdullah has his own Sahifa, about 500 ahadith. They are well known. When did he write? Directly from the mouth? We don't know, but most likely like Abu Hurairah. After the Prophet died, he said, I should write what I remember from the Prophet in my own. And this is the best what the Christian have. They have, for example, Matthew writing the utterances of the Lord, which is not the Matthew gospel now. No, this is a gospel. It's not in utterances. He write a collection of utterances, which is not available now. But according to the narration of the Christian, it was written 3 years after the ascension of Christ. So this is similar. So we have that. And this one is extant by the Christians, not in their hands. Some bits of it is conserved in the current gospels, but the original is lost, and they call it, possibly that's what they call Q, the Quella. So we have the Quella, they don't have. So that's these two, and other Sahaba. So the claim that it was not written is wrong. At the time of Prophet was written. There was also various things written at the time of Prophet. For example, all Zakah issues were written down, because when he sent one to collect Zakah, he would write him a sheet, a scroll, not a sheet, a scroll, out of parchment and skin, in which the details of the zakat are given, and the various parchment that Abu Bakr and that Anas ibn Malik and so on, and they are narrated. Also, he wrote the agreement of Medina, the Sahifa of Medina, and it was various copies. One copy was with Ali ibn Abi Talib. He kept it so because of its importance and because of its barakah, because it's written directly from Prophet dictation. He kept it bound, tied up to the sheet of his sword. And when somebody said, did the Prophet give you anything special? So he did not give us anything special except what is in the Sahifa. So what is in the Sahifa? Is there any secret? There's no secret. In the Sahifas, for example, issues about how much is the blood money for this and this and this. And there's issues about that Medina is also a haram, is a protected sanctuary. Whoever commits any sin there, may Allah and His angel and all believer curse him. And various issues like that in the Sahifa. So these are all writings. So it's not true that there was no writing. There's plenty of writing. Another issue is the Mustashriqeen, the Orientalists took as a counter evidence. You see, I'm discussing only the history of recordation of the Sunnah. I will come to the metaphysical issue of the protection of the Dhikr, maybe in another, because today we are late, in another session. But let us have that, so we see how it historically has developed, and how the narrate about themselves. That's all what we have. We don't have anything. We don't have any video records of that time. We don't have anything engraved on the side of the mountain. We don't have artifacts. That's all what we have. So we have to go by that. But some of these parchments, old parchments, bits of them are available, and they synchronize very well. By the way, in Yemen they have found very old parchment of the Mus'haf. It may be even containing abrogated ayahs, fell from the Syrian Mus'haf, and tests, I think they have done tests of radiation dating. They date from the time of Prophet. Most likely they are possibly from the Sahif, copied from Mu'ad ibn Jabal, who was sent to Yemen. Until now they did not publish anything like that, and we have to wait for the publication and see really copies, images and photos of that to judge how it is. But it's really a very important find. And they claim there is variation from the current Mus'haf. I say, welcome, we know there were variation. We know they were abrogated ayahs. We know that the Masahif have been synchronized properly in the Mus'haf. So it's not like the Quran, you think that the Mus'haf come on the side of mountain, written by a pen of fire like the tablets of the Torah coming from heaven. It's not like that. It's by the same process. The Sunnah is written. The only thing, it is done immediately, according to the narration outside the Quran, and its style is different, so it can be distinguished early. But they were abrogation. They were crossing out of the Quran and recombining. It was recombined continuously according to it. It is the same. If there is doubt there will be doubt there. In the Sunnah may be more than the Quran, because most of the Sunnah is ahad and the Quran is tawatur. Yes, but if there is doubt, the doubt will be there. The doubt will be there. So the same system of verification of narration must be applied to both the Quran and the Sunnah. It's the same, because they narrate the same way. The only thing is the Quran have been written down. Its style is clear. It's very easy to recognize a phrase from the Sunnah from the phrase of the Quran because of the linguistic analysis and so on. But ultimately, the verification has to be done. Both. There's no escape. It is not an easy job. It is a very difficult job, but it has to be done. So the claim that this is guaranteed by Allah is a very tall order. How do you know that this is even from Muhammad first, before you go to Allah? It doesn't work this way. If you want to be rational, you have to work the rational way, and you have to refute the Orientalists. So that's what happened in the Sunnah, that we have a considerable amount, a good fraction of the Sunnah, maybe a quarter of it, or something of the valid Sunnah, the important Sunnah, is written at the time of the Prophet, maybe a third, because 2,000 hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr al-As written immediately as he pronounced it from his mouth. That's number one. Then we have a considerable amount, maybe about half, written after his death, a few years, meaning Abu Hurairah, Jabir, and the others, and quite a number of other Sahabi which have their own manuscripts and so on. And then we have the others narrated. Normally the others who are narrating very little, normally, not all, because for example Aisha narrates plenty, but he never wrote anything. She narrates from memory. The same applied for Anas ibn Malik. We are not aware about the Sahifa of Anas at the time. They may be very later, but not in that time frame. He narrates from memory. But the majority of our narration is someone having one story, two stories, one hadith, two hadith. That's all what's there. That has been accumulated by the Tabi'een. We can conclude almost with certitude from various bits of narration, again, which is synchronized to make it impossible to believe that it's all fabricated deliberately, because they are mentioned casually. A story mentioned there mentions something for this tabi'i casually, for this tabi'i casually, without any relation to recordation of the Sunnah, just casually in another story, which is that this tabi'i has written down all his what he took from the Sahaba. So writing down was the common feature of all tabi'in, with very few exceptions. Maybe a blind man will rely only on his memory. Even those who are relying on their memory, they have their own manuscripts which they check at night and read again. For example, Abu Hurairah is known in his later part of life that he was divided his stand up in night for that he prays sometime. If he does something at night, he prays a bit of the night, then he reads the Quran another bit of the night, and then he reads his own manuscripts about Sunnah in the night. So he's reviewing his own memory and enforcing it according to his writing continuously, every night, until he died. So the next day when he sits in the halaqah, narrating a hadith of Prophet, then he's dictating not only from memory, from his manuscript which he's keeping at home. That's Abu Hurairah. The others is the same. Does not mean that he, in the original writing, he's 100% infallible. No, he may have made a mistake. Maybe in the time he was in Medina, he was mixing too much with Ka'b al-Ahbar, the Jew, who narrates stories about the creation of Adam and the world, and some may have interfered in his mind, which can be criticized. Well, I will discuss one example of that later, inshallah. But the general situation is like that. For the Tabi'een, it is mostly written down. Already some of the Sahaba, like Ibn Abbas and others, they have organized their classes almost like a university. For example, Ibn Abbas, he was admitting the people who want fiqh in a certain hour. Then he tells the people fiqh, that's your hour is over, go out. Then he admits the people of poetry and Arabic language in 1 hour. Then people who are looking for tafsir and Quran in another hour. So we have already classes already organized by Ibn Abbas. Other Sahaba have similar situation or non-similar. Ibn Abbas is very distinguished, being maybe the major scholar of the Sahaba, the most intellectually oriented under them. The Tabi'een, they have definitely organized and formalized dictation session. The Tabi'een have formalized that already completely. And they were recording everything, who is attending, who is not attending, all of that was recorded. There's so many scattered bits of information without any doubt. So in the generation of Malik and Abu Hanifa and all these are guys, everything is writing in them. What misled also the Mustashriqeen, partly, but I think it's not really misleading. They used it mischievously and they wanted to play with the minds of some people, like these simple-minded Quranis and simple-minded Muslims and Arabs in modern times who are in a state of shock from their Western scholarship, is that the usual phrase used by Muhaddithin, حدثنا, told us or reported to us, أخبرنا. No, حدثنا from hadith, from talking. So it seems to be as if it is narrated orally. And they thought, if Bukhari is taken from his sheikh orally, and his sheikh from the other sheikh orally, and that from orally, then it is an oral chain, there is nothing writing. How can much you trust such an oral chain? But this is a misconception. The word حدثنا mean that the sheikh was pronouncing by himself, does not mean he was reading by himself, does not mean that he is reading only from memory. It may be reading from his own book, dictating, and that was the standard. They were dictating usually from their book or from memory according to a book. Another one is you read on the Sheikh from his book, which has already dictated or he has written down and verified and checked to him, and he said, yes, this is my dictate. So we are reading from a book, like most Muwatta, all of them are like that. All the Muwatta, Malik dictated the Muwatta, the student has written it down, and then new students read it to Malik, and Malik said, yes, that's what my narration, exactly like that. It is written. They have their written copy in their hand. And Malik, from his shaykhs, the same. Most of them are dictating from their book. And this is the standard. The standard is dictating from the book. Only very few are doing from memory, and these doing from memory, they have their own book. And it's the right of the student to ask the sheikh, show me your book also. So he verifies what the sheikh dictates. That was standard. It was the standard. So the time of like 130 Hijri, 140, 150, where the scholarship reached a level of maturity, like in the time of Shu'bah and Sufyan al-Thawri and Malik and so on, already this was well-established discipline, and the one attending in the halaqas were known. They started recording their names in the list of attendance. All of that was formalized like that. Later on it became much more formalized, into the level that in the book, because later all narrations were actually books. The later books, you find even in the final cover of the book, the dates of reading and who was the main writer and who was listening there. And sometimes they have a very long list of people who are attending, including sometimes attendance of children is recorded there, and they're recording their age. That's in later books. But in that generation, it was not common that children under 10, 12 attend. Usually 15, 16 adults were attending. And the list of attendance was there. So that was already there. So the writing was the standard. And another misconception, they think because Bukhari and Muslim and Abu Dawood and so on, all of these are like in the 3rd century, 250. Bukhari died 260, around that. Muslim is about the same time. Abu Dawood slightly after them. Tirmidhi after that, because Tirmidhi is a student of Bukhari. All of these main scholars of the Ahmad al-Hanbal is before them. They think that's where the writing started. That's a mistake. These all are relying on sources which are essentially written before them. The generation before them, like the generation of Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Malik, and Layth, all of these have their own written, and some of their books are available now as books. But many of them are absorbed in other books, and the people just forgot about the older books and took the newer one which collects previous one. So it will be a mistake to think Musnad Ahmad is taken orally from people. Most of it is, for example, a striking example is there is a scroll called the Sahif of Hammam ibn Munabbih. Hammam ibn Munabbih is a Yemeni scholar of Jewish origin who converted to Islam. He was a student of Abu Hurairah. He narrated from him a Sahifa, a scroll, in which Hammam said, حدثنا Abu Hurairah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's all. He has between him and the Prophet only Abu Hurairah. This scroll is available, was found recently, and was known in time past, also narrated. The whole scroll is part of Musnad Ahmad. And if you compare that with Musnad Ahmad with the existing scroll, it is exactly the scroll dot by dot, letter by letter. It's just a copy of that. So Ahmad took from plenty of written sources. So the claim it is not written sources, from a historical point of view, is invalid. Now the claims of Goldsira and Shacht, because the Western scholarship was at the beginning. Goldsira is in the 19th century. And Shacht lived until early in the 20th century. I almost said our century because I was living in the 20th century. But we are now in the 21st. That scholarship was really primitive at the time. All these books which have been dug now recently in the last 34 years, and all these manuscripts which have been found all over the world, and the wave of verifying and checking manuscripts was not there. So we can excuse them for it. I don't think I'm willing to excuse them, because I think there was a hidden agenda. There was a deliberate, misguided way.
So they weren't just genuine research?
I don't think they have the intention to do a genuine research to show what is the reality. They have a misconception in their mind, and they thought, it's all hadathana, it's all oral, nothing was written. Recently, an Orientalist who was of Turkish origin and being nominally a Muslim, Fuad Siskin, and I think he's also a practical Muslim, I'm not sure. He's the professor of Orientalism in Frankfurt. Maybe he's still alive, because he's not old. He's maybe slightly older than myself, so he should be still alive. He wrote the Geschichte des Arabischen Schrifttums, the history of Arabic literature, several volumes. the volume about Hadith, he refutes Shaykh, says this is absurd to believe that Bukhari is relying on the oral sources. And he shows that so many scrolls and books are before many Musnad, before Bukhari already there, for Musnad Ahmad, and even before Musnad Ahmad, there are Musnad al-Tayalisi, Musnad Ahmad ibn Mani', Musnad al-Humaydi, all major scholars before Ahmad ibn Hanbal, with the Sheikhs of Ahmad, they have their own books and Musnads. And many of them are still available as a book in our hand. And many have been absorbed and swallowed completely in other books. So this is all a misconception. He has proved it can't be. There's already enormous amount of books and books in circulation before that, from the generation before and before. And we know before that, there was also, for example, there's the narration that Zuhri, who is a minor tabi'i, minor because he only got to take from about 4 or 5 or maybe 10 of the smaller Sahaba, of the youngest Sahaba, who lived until 70, 80 Hijri. So some Sahabis lived 80, 90 years, and so they were like young men, 15, 17, 18 at the time of Prophet. Zuhri did hear from Anas ibn Malik, hear from Ibn Su'ayr and few others, but mostly from Tabi'in, from all the Tabi'in. Zuhri's books, because he has his own manuscripts in parchments at that time, paper was not developed yet. And papyrus, Egyptian style papyrus, is not reliable like paper. Paper developed later. It developed at the end of the life of Zuhri, but became really widespread and available only at the time of Malik and Abu Hanifa. Then paper was widespread and available at cheap prices, and then writing books and producing books became very cheap because it was affordable everywhere in the Muslim world and otherwise within the Muslim world, because Europe was in deep sleep, in dark ages anyway at that time. So before that was parchment. He had his books. When he travels needing 10 camels to carry his books. That's his library. So he is keeping an enormous library, Zuhri. And we can assume the other scholars are very similar to Zuhri. They're keeping also enormous libraries at home, or because they're not traveling like Zuhri. Zuhri traveled quite a lot. After he became a scholar and people were learning in him. Because the other scholars usually travel in their younger years. And they collect and write down their books, etc.
So 10 camels.
10 camels. So, no, but beware that parchments are, although they are thin, heavier than paper. Okay. So the 10 camels will be, if you say a camel carry 200 kilos and 300, will be, you have 3 tons of, it's equivalent to 1 ton of books now, but still it's 1,000 of books.
So
that's all his own books, his own writing, what he wrote in his life. That's his own books. Because at that time there were no public books you buy from the bookshop like later on, when the paper was invented, there were public bookshops, you can go and buy Muwatta of Malik. But not at that time. It was not. You have to have your own book with your own handwriting, or writing of someone you trust and rely on his writing. That's the way it was. So from a historic point of view, the claim of the unreliability of Sunnah is just absurd. It can't be all this massive number of narrators, or this massive scholarship can all be in wholesale unreliable. Yes, there are hadith with broken chains. They have to be weeded out. Nobody said anything out. There are some narrators who narrate verbally and others narrate with the meaning. Yes, but this is the job of the faqih to see where is the wording of the Prophet ﷺ and where is the wording of the Sahabi. Many Sahabi narrate only the meaning of that. Like for example, we have just recently, Ismail was present when we discussed the hadith of Safwan ibn Assal al-Muradi when he says that the Messenger of Allah ordered us to wipe over the khuf for 3 days and 3 nights on travel, and 1 day and night, but we don't take them out, don't pull them out for what, except in the case of ghusl, full body wash for janaba, but not from urine or defecation or sleep. And we're discussing the word sleep. Is it the word of Safwan ibn Assal or the word of Rasulullah? This is scholarly discussion. That there's a discussion and issues there does not mean that this is all unreliable. It does not mean that. It means that a scholarly issue, you have to work hard if you want to be a scholar. So give up being lazy. There's no place in hadith science, but also in Quran there's no place for lazy bums. You have to be more energetic than just having a website and putting just few doubts. Doubts are abound everywhere, even about the Quran, even of the Quran meaning, the wording of the Quran. Some have multiple interpretation, and you have to use this. You have to have your brain working hard to analyze the meaning and see what is the meaning of other ayahs and put them together in such a way that you come to a proper meaning. And this is a matter of in which ijtihad can fail and you can make a blunder, even in understanding the Quran. It can. So it is not that you have the Quran, even if it's absolutely reliable transported to us. I prefer the word transported than narrated, because narration is usually by meaning or by all wording. But transported is just like someone transporting it. We would have at that time an MP3 would have really a recitation of the Sahaba in our hand, but we don't have, unfortunately. But we have the next best, the wording and the punctuation in the exact, absolutely reliable narration and transportation. So there you have to use your own brain and analyze it correctly. And there are places in the Quran you have to synchronize them in the proper way, using all your linguistic skill and capabilities and proper meaning of the Quran to ascertain the definite meaning, so that the Quran is transported beyond doubt. Does not mean that all meanings are clear and evident like the daylight. In some places you have to do plenty of mental analysis and proper understanding to ascertain the meaning and get the fiqh. So there's also pitfalls of ijtihad there. Human infallibility is working there also. So thinking that the Quran is transported reliably, meaning we have attained certitude about everything, is not true. Actually, you have less certitude with the Sunnah in the Quran alone than with the Sunnah, provided the Sunnah is weeded and cleaned properly. So the broken chains, no doubt. Anything with broken chain is not reliable, and this is already asserted by the Hadith scholars. The Western scholarship will never reach that level, because all their chains for the Gospels as well is broken anyway. So they have nothing better than that. But we have much better than that. So they go by meaning, by linguistic analysis, by whimsical. For example, if you assume that Jesus ﷺ was a gay, then you interpret everything in the Bible as a gay, in a gay direction. Another one who was a mischievous Jew say, all of it indicate a philosophy of someone who is of questionable descent, meaning his mother is questionable, but he doesn't dare saying it publicly. So you can interpret his statement there as that is, or even one said clearly, this is a very good philosophy for illegitimate sons. What does he mean? If you start from that, because you don't have enough material to start. In the Sunnah we have plenty of material for self-cross-referencing and corroborating. But you have to analyze that. Also, if you say that some Sahaba and some Tabi'in narrated by wording, definitely, and some narrated by meaning, definitely we have that. That narration by wording is to give preference. But also, the narration by wording comes various chains with variations. You can analyze the chains and see what is the the largest common or the smallest common denominator of wording there. So you could say this seems to be the prophetic wording, or this is well established to be the prophetic wording, and this is maybe not a prophetic wording. All of that has to be done, and the scholars are not the same level of sophistication and capability in that. Some of them very, very exacting, and some are less. No doubt about that. So this is all there. So that all has to be done. This is scholarly work. Now, this is the historic situation of the Sunnah. In itself, it looks like its reliability, as a wholesale reliability, cannot be doubted. What can be doubted, that single narration are questionable. Absolutely, no doubt about that. Single narration has been misunderstood by the narrator, and he narrated them in the wrong wording because he misunderstood them, without any doubt. We can find examples of that. There are many narrations who are narrated word by word. We can establish that. There are some narrations which are reliably narrated to a Sahabi, without any doubt, because his students, 5 or 6 of his first-class students, narrate the same from him. But the meaning is contradicting necessity of reason or contradicting history of the Quran. So we can conclude that the Sahabi got confused. Example for that, famous one we were discussing recently, is the couple of narrations of Abu Hurairah about the creation of man, and the one about were it not for Bani Israel, then meat would have not become stinky, or things like that. We must conclude. But this will be the conclusion we're concluding, is because we have established metaphysically already that the Quran is well established and the other narrations are well established, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So such a fallacy cannot come from him. Based on that, we assume that Abu Hurairah confused in his mind while hearing Ka'b al-Ahbar narrating Jewish stories. Some of the Jewish stories may have interfered in his mind with some prophetic statements, and he thought he heard the Prophet say it. This happens very often. We have also Hadith people narrating that some story. For example, recently I was reading once about one narrator said, I narrated to this man this hadith, and after many years I met him, he was narrating the hadith as if he is the one who heard it, and he never heard it before. He took it from me, but after many years he thought he heard it from my sheikh, and he was honestly believing that he heard from sheikh. I remember, sheikh, I am the one who gave it to you, did not know it at that time. And he corrected himself, he recognized it was a mistake. So it can happen in human mind. Human mind is not infallible. All of this happen. Obviously some people will feel discomfort, say this will undermine Sharia and Deen, but it's a mistake. It doesn't undermine Sharia and Deen. All what it does is that this brain starts working, and it's forced to work. The same like the Quran having many statements which have multiple meaning deliberately, so that the brain starts working. This grey material should work, should not sleep. That's the purpose of having the Quran. Could be if it's from Allah. Allah is capable of making all of it muhkam, having one single clear. That's possible. It's not a problem. But Allah deliberately make it so you learn how to go to things which have multiple meaning, to analyze them and check the one with the unique meaning and synchronize them, so that the one which has possibly a confusing meaning will refer to the muhkam. The mutashabih will go back to the muhkam. This is the Quran itself. The mutashabih go to the muhkam. So these issues are a boon, provided someone understand them and give them their right place. There are places that they will initiate enormous scholarship. They will develop an excellent discipline. The discipline of verification of ahadith and isnad and all of that, no other nation developed in the world, and it can be used everywhere in the world to verify even the authenticity of books nowadays. For example, there's a book in circulation, which claims this admission of a British spy called Humphrey, in which he claimed Muhammad Rahab was in Basra and he had the nikah al-mut'a, and then he was anti-Shia and he started fighting the Shia and so on. I read that story and analyzed it, being trained in hadith tradition. First of all, I asked, where is the source of that, where it is, how can we know that the man who was living that? Then I synchronized it with historic, like the people of hadith did with historic events, and found it's asynchronous. Then from between the lines and from the style of it, the writer is very sympathetic to Shia and praising them against Sunni, so it must be a Shi'i. So I told one Shi'i scholar here, who is rebellious against the Shia establishment, told him, I read the book and so on, I am confident it's a fabrication, and I think a Shia fabricated. And he smiled, say, how did you know? Say, because in this phrase and this phrase, he praised the Shia and say the Shia cannot have anything with the kuffar because they regard the kuffar as najis. I said, only a Shia can write that. I said, you are right. I know scholar so and he mentioned his name. I don't remember the name. I'm not covering for him up. If I remember, I will say it. So and so on. And I discussed with him. I squeezed him in the corner. He admitted he's the one who fabricated that 20 or 30 years back and put it into circulation.
Wow.
That's because we are trained in hadith. Most likely in that case, because of the textual analysis, you will come to that conclusion.
The Qur'aniyun people, they say that there is no such thing in the Quran, okay, as muhkam and mutashabih.
The Quran says that. Quran says that, then they have a problem with the Quran.
They say that there should be no room for interpretation. The Quran is clear, it's fulfilled.
The Quran says that, then they don't believe in the Quran. The Quran says in Ali Imran, هو الذي أنزل لك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات وأم الكتاب وأخرى متشابهات. آيات الكتاب. Unless they mean another book, maybe the book of Musa, then we are in trouble then. Then with all their theory in trouble, then all the dhikr may be another dhikr, not that dhikr. It doesn't work this way. So in the next session, we will discuss, then we go to the Quran, come to the metaphysical proof, what does it mean, the protection of the Quran, and what's the protection from the Quran. Yes. But from historically, all these attempts, which they will not synchronize. All the stories about Umar, I've said, they are unreliable. Even more unreliable than the story of the Sunnah. Because the one arguing that the Sunnah is protected in a certain sense will refer to the Quran, as I will come in the second part. But their argument will not be valid for Umar, because their argument is that Allah took on him to protect the Sunnah, because it's part of the dhikr, and the protection of Sunnah is happening by a natural way of hadith verification and hadith science. This applies, and this guarantee, only if narration is going to the Prophet ﷺ, because that has to be protected. If a narration to go to Umar, Allah did not take on him to protect it. Because Yawm al-Qiyamah, you could ask Allah, I believe this narration, Umar say, who told you that I guaranteed that I protect Umar's fatwa? Did anyone tell you that? I told you I protect the dhikr. Is Umar's action dhikr? No. Then shut up. You are the idiot who did not do your job properly. So the story of Umar may be unreliable, completely, maybe fabricated. Allah did not take on him that, but He took on him that anyone fabricating, make a mistake, I will put a sign for the scholars, for the one who put the effort and struggle to achieve knowledge, to find the sign that this hadith is having a mistake, or this hadith is having a broken chain which doesn't look like a broken chain, or have a hidden disease which the scholars have. All these signs of hidden disease and so on, how it was developed. You could say because the scholars use their brain. I can't say metaphysically because Allah made their brain to think in that direction. Let me give you an example, just a funny example before we conclude for today. Imam al-Layth ibn Sa'ad, who is very late and all his things are in writing, that's not narrated, that's in his own books and his students' books. When he was young, he performed pilgrimage and he met Abu Zubayr al-Makki, who is a student of Jabir, the companion, and went to Abu Zubayr. And this is an evidence that this was written down. He did not have time, but he said, I will give me a copy of your book. So Abu Zubayr handed him a book, his narration, because Abu Zubayr is mostly narrated from Jabir, but he's narrated from other companions and tabi'in too. So Al-Layth, who is an authority and a trustworthy, top level of narrators, took the book about to go back to Egypt in his younger years. In the way he said, it came in my mind, is that all? Oh, no, because it says, حدثنا عن جابر, from Jabir. Is that all Abu Zubayr heard from Jabir directly, or maybe through an intermediary? Because the word an could be meaning both from Jabir, could be I heard it from him, or some other source told me about him.
From him, yeah.
The word in Arabic an can assume both. Possibly he heard that Abu Zubayr is having a liberty in the word an. Maybe he heard that, but he did not mention the story. It came in my mind. Someone could say it is just a scholarly mind which is easily troubled by various things. Someone say Allah put it in his mind. Whatever you pick, it happened in the universe like that. So he went back to Abu Zubayr and told him, you gave me this book for narration from Jabir. Because he asked only for the narration from Jabir, not from anybody else. He was not interested by this book. This is all from Jabir. Said yes. Did you hear all it from Jabir? Say no. Some of it I heard it. Some of it I through an intermediary. He said, do you know which one you? He said, you know, I memorized exactly which one I heard directly. Which I from intermediary, and he went that made a cross at everyone which is not direct. So let's say I took the book back. And all the one Abu Zubayr made a sign that he did not hear directly, I crossed them completely out and copied the book, only the one he directly heard. And this is the one I narrating to you. I will never narrate anything from him which he did not hear directly from Jabir. So someone could say, this is a happy circumstance. Or someone say, no, Allah put it in his mind. Take your pick. Happy circumstance, Allah put it in his mind. His brain cells having firing synapses, whatever you wish, it happened. Now, if you have the metaphysical proof which we have, and the Quran is from Allah, and Allah took an image, you could say this is a sign that Allah is behind the scene, moving the minds. Come on, say, it doesn't need to do that. The way the universe works, and the people are devoted to the Hadith and devoting their whole life for Hadith, will work this way that the protection will be effective. But we have the metaphysical guarantee of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He protects the dhikr, and that Sunnah is the dhikr, as we will verify from the Quran, obviously. Because if we want to prove that the Sunnah is dhikr, we have to verify from the Quran. Assuming that the Quran is from Allah and it has been protected in a certain way, then we will show that the Sunnah is protected. Now, protection, just without preempting what we say, protection of something is depending on the nature of the thing. If I'm protecting a city, I protect a city by having an army surrounding it. I don't protect it by having someone singing or narrating music. That doesn't protect the city. It needs an army. Or in time past, you need a very high wall. When armies were on horseback. But now with the heavy artillery and guns, it is no good. You have to have an airport nearby and aeroplanes scrambling quickly and bombing the enemy within approach. That's the way to protect the city. It doesn't help to have al-Bukhari analyzing the city is protected. It doesn't help. It has to be protected by force, by guns. If I protect the Sunnah, meaning Allah, and we know the Sunnah, from physically the Sunnah has been narrated mostly by Ahad, then Allah has taken him any narration which is valid according to scholarly proper principles, a trustworthy narrative from another one, will be valid. Anyone who is not narrated like that, either a man is weak in his memory or a man is exposed as a liar, and anyone lying once, I will expose him. He will not get away with his lie, especially if he's narrating Sunnah. If he lies about anything in other dunya, he may wait until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Anyone lying about Sunnah, even once, I will expose him. So you know him, this is a liar. He will be crossed out in all narration. And this happened in history. No one narrated or lied in the Sunnah without being exposed in dunya or scandalized somewhere and exposed clearly and admitting that he lied.
So, is there any hadith from the Prophet, direct chain, sahih, which has contradicted a mutawatir hadith or Quran?
No, there's none. There's none. There's none contradicting. Provided you verify it with the technicalities of that and also do the textual analysis.
That someone's trustworthy, it's an unbroken chain, and when you go through the whole rigorous process, has there been examples where they've rejected those hadith because it has contradicted?
Yeah, we have the example you mentioned that the creation of 7 days. The scholar rejected that. So it's a mistake by Abu Hurairah. Because the Quran is clear that it's 6 days. And anyway, I would say generalize that any hadith which said this was created on Saturday, this on Sunday, this on Tuesday, etc., is most likely fabricated. Because giving names for the day, phases of creation, is the Jewish tradition. It's not an Islamic tradition. The Quran says in 6 days, not mentioning these days have anything to do with the days of dunya at all. It's only the Jews synchronize that in their mind with Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or actually starting with Sunday and ending until Friday, and then rested on Saturday according to their myth. Another one which does not contradict Quran but contradict reality is, for example, that when Adam being created 60 foot in heaven, and then the creation shrunk slowly. Where is it? Even Ibn Hajar Asqalani doubted that, said, even if we take the story of the Old Testament correct, that Adam 6,000 years back, then 2,000 years back, humanity must have been one-third was 2,000 over 6,000, must have been reduced by 2/3 in this time. But we have the graves of people of 2,000 years like Ibrahim and so on. They are not 20 arm lengths in heaven. They are just our own length. How many arm lengths I have myself? Maybe 4? 5? Not even 5, 4. So there must be some problem there. Say, Allahu Alam, I don't know how to solve that problem. Problem is clear, we know now. We have dug everything even million years back. We didn't find anyone except the dinosaurs, but I don't think Adam was a dinosaur. So anyway, I interpret it as a dinosaur, then this is supporting for Darwin. That's one way. Or another way, it's just interfered in Abu Hurairah's mind, and he put it together in the hadith of the Prophet. That's it.
I think we need about 2 or 3 sessions on this topic, subject.
And with such examples, but that's meaning the hadith is changed by his word, but the text is contradictory. And he said that's then we know Abu Hurairah was in the time Ka'b al-Ahbar was rampant in Medina and was visiting and sitting with Umar and the Sahaba and narrating his story. Some people say, for example, Rashid Rida in Al-Manar accused Ka'b al-Ahbar, who was a Jewish scholar from Yemen who converted to Islam, accused him to be zindiq, to be munafiq, attempting to undermine Islam. I wouldn't really go to that extreme. Maybe the man is honest, but he's a scholar, he's narrating from his scholarship. Because Ibn Abbas is narrating stories like that or even worse. Did it mean Ibn Abbas is undermining Islam? No, he's a scholar narrating the knowledge of his time. So why we are very upset about it? And I think it will be unfair to Ka'b al-Ahbar. I'm very conspiracy minded. Don't think I'm not. I'm very, but I don't think it's a good way to attack Ka'b al-Ahbar. The man is a Jewish scholar. He has this knowledge. He thinks this is really has happened in history like that Adam was really 60 feet in heavens, and 60 not feet is 60 arm length. Let's say 30 cubits. Cubit is this dhira', which is half meter. So about 30 meter in the sky. And then the creation slowly shrunk bit by bit until it became our length nowadays. That's what he believed, and that's the scholar knowledge in his time, which is false, which is fine, no problem. It doesn't harm your belief, but if we keep it and regard it as sahih coming from the Prophet, there is a problem. And the way to declare to be wrong is to say, no, the Prophet is definitely will not have narrated something contradicting reality and contradicting well-established knowledge. So it must be a mistake by some of the narrators. But you have to establish that he's a prophet before. And you have to bring the evidences which are irrefutable, which is the Quran and other evidences, which we have, for example, in the Book of Tawheed, a small summary of them. That based on that, the evidence must go this way. You have to establish that he is a prophet first, beyond doubt, based on things which are irrefutable, like prophecies of the future, several of them which are independent of any narration and verification of hadith, which we have in the Book of Tawheed, for example, the miraculous nature of the Quran, many other aspects. If that's well established in doubt, then he's definitely established a bigger prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the infallibility is established, so this cannot be from him. This is why. So the establishing of hadith being correct is not only the chain, it's also the content of the hadith. But normally the chain will do the job. Normally, in 99.9% of the cases, but still the text has to be scrutinized. And this is that some of the Quran is putting issues like that on the table is very healthy in the sense that make those who
it pushes us to question our own whole
first of all forces people to analyze things deeper, to become to rational principles first before jumping the gun, and also to force people to analyze some things which are a little bit odd and needs to be taken really more seriously than taken in the past. But there are other things to be also scrutinized, not only Abu Hurairah narration, not only the guilty is Abu Hurairah, like some people try to attack Abu Hurairah. If Abu Hurairah made a mistake in 3, 4, 5 hadith out of 5,000, this is almost miraculous in accuracy and exactness. This is no problem. We have also some other hadith which are having some question marks, like the one about that the fetus will be 40 and 40 and 40 in these phases. Most likely the narrator made a mistake. It's on the total is 40, not 40 and 40. But also what shows there's a question about the hadith. It said that an angel comes and asks, "Oh Lord, it is a male or female?" We know this cannot be the case, because male and female is already the moment of fertilization is already decided. So it can't be decided now. Because it means he has to make a decision. He has to make a writing down. So there's a question mark, but I have to check the wording of these hadith and various narrations and see where is the fault. The chain, there's no doubt about the chain. This is in Bukhari, but it contradicts the other hadith that it is not فَعَلَقَ مُضْغَةً in 40, 41, 42 days, according to the knowledge of Allah. This sounds more reasonable. It is 40 days or 41 or 42. So it's a variation of 1 or 2 days, which we regard as more reasonable, and this 40 days for the total is that one, because the heart starts beating after 40 days.
Are you taking that from the text or from the chain?
From the text and the chain. So this, but so normally
40 is that's
in the wording. That's the wording.
So that's the wording.
That's the wording. No, the chain is just the men. The men as the reliable. That's no problem. That's an example that has to be scrutinized, because that contradicts the other one, and contradicts also that 40, 40, 40, that's 120. How many months are those? These are 4 months. 4 months, the baby is already well advanced. If we regard this, the blowing of the spirit and gaining a personality with the heart, starting with the heartbeat, really, where there's really the first sign of animal life is there. If we interpret that, then it is by 41, 42, 42 days or something else. So the narrator made a mistake.
But then you're only questioning the hadith based upon recent scientific.
No, as a hadith. There's another hadith. But what's the problem in questioning based on well-established scientific knowledge?
What I'm saying is that previously, before we had...
we don't blame the people. No problem. The people did not have the tool. They are not...
200 years ago, they would...
No problem. What's the problem with that? They made a mistake. What's the fuss? It's not only mistake that people made.
There's no ahkam involved in it, so it makes
even if there's ahkam involved in it, what's the problem? Who said that nobody will make an error in ijtihad and ahkam? They made an error starting from the time of Abu Bakr. Even in the time of Hassan, they made an error. They were in a battle campaign, and a man had a wet dream, and he asked his companions what I should do. So you have to take a shower. Say it's cold. Say no, we must take a shower. He took a shower. He contracted the cold. He shivered and died. And the Rasul was outraged. Say, qatalahum Allah. They killed him. May Allah kill them. Didn't they ask if they don't know? So they gave the wrong fatwa. It will happen all the time. So what's the fuss? The problem with people, they get stuck with that thing, the whole universe will collapse. It won't collapse. It won't collapse. It will happen all the time. Humans will make fatwa, make wrong judgment, even wrong court ruling. People will be executed wrongly, while the judge did his best effort, or maybe a judge did not misbehavior and he mischievously intended to kill the man under the cover of judiciary. This one will wait for him, the hellfire will be waiting. But you will see it only in Yawm al-Qiyamah. What's the fuss? All will be settled, don't worry. So what's the problem with that? This is happening also with the Quran alone. There are misinterpretation and misjudgments there also by many scholars. And then later scholarship correct that and clarify it. No problem. As long as you do your best judgment and your best analysis and best effort to gain the appropriate knowledge with all the knowledge and information you have of your time, as reliable as possible, because maybe your information of your time is as miserable as it could be later, but at your time is the best you had. Nobody can blame you, but the blame is the one coming after who has better knowledge and still stick like a donkey, like some Salafis taking to Ibn Abbas mistakes and so on, and his narration of Israelite stories and thinking it is valid. How the people before Noah became mushrikeen. Allahu Akbar. We don't know how they became in Arabia. Now we go time back to Noah. After that time, it was the available knowledge or the available speculation. It is no problem. Ibn Abbas is great, but they are donkeys. What can we do? It's a problem. We have great scholars and some donkeys following after that. You have to do, the job has to be done generation by generation. If the Qur'ani thinks that by that they have settled a problem and they don't do anything, they are mistaken. There will be tomorrow another problem they have to address from the Qur'an. There's no escape. There's no escape from that. The ijtihad has to continue. And reanalyzing and studying it correct have to continue until Yawm al-Qiyamah. There will be more information coming which will prove the veracity of the Qur'an, as we have now more scientific knowledge and information proving the Qur'an is from Allah more and more. Nowadays we have things which nobody in the time which shows that's also wrong, because we will show them our sign in the horizon and in themselves until it is clear to them that it's the truth. It was not all available at the time of the Prophet. Some of it was available, later it became more and more. And he said himself, لا تفنى عجائبه, in one hadith, which may be fabricated, by the way, but it doesn't seem to be the miracles and the amazement of the Quran will never end. It will be always amazing something, and you can repeat it, but it will not become boring by repeating. And we know that. It's one of the few texts which you can repeat 1,000 of times, it never becomes boring. Any story, when you read it 3-4 times, you wouldn't like reading it again. But the Quran is having such a style, it will never become boring. It's always interesting. You come back to it and you will enjoy it. But it's amazement. وَلَا تَفْنَى عَجَائِبُ. It's amazement will never end. Every day you find something new amazing. New generation, new knowledge will expose things which are more interesting. If you look at the explanation about heavens and earth and physical phenomena at the time of Ibn Abbas, it's quite primitive, really. Either it is just simple explanation, or shallow explanation, face value, but if you look at the wording and compare it, for example, with modern scientific knowledge, you will be amazed. It fits more what we have now well established. Scientific knowledge much more. Like for example, Najm al-Thaqib. Najm al-Thaqib. Najm al-Thaqib, the old scholars interpret it as the comet, the shooting star. But it's better interpreted as pulsars and black holes. And there was some piece in the internet recently which says Thaqib is the penetrating, it penetrates in the, but what's the meaning of penetrating in space and so on? If you take the word exactly. Another place where you say, I don't swear with the stars, but with the position of the star, and it is an oath which is very great if you knew, meaning the position or the distances of the star is so enormous, so far and far away from your imagination and perception. At the time that's described from earth until heaven, it is like riding on a camel for 500 years. According to for them it was great. We know that is now. Even riding on the back of a light ray, you will take thousands of years to reach some of these stars. It's much further away than I can imagine. And then قَسَمُ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. It is an oath if you knew, it is great. But they didn't know at that time. They know now. And many things that will come, so you have to redetect the Quran alone. The same with the Sunnah, you have to re-verify and to re-study it again, re-analyze it. And then we will have, you have scholarly mistakes in time past, which is excuse for them. They have the excuse because of the limitation of their time, but you don't have the excuse now. So next time we'll go inshallah to the text of the Quran and see what's the meaning of the word of the dhikr and what's the meaning of hafidhu. We indeed did reveal the dhikr and we are going to protect it. We are protecting it. And we will show that the dhikr definitely contains Quran, Sunnah also. And the protection of Sunnah must be suitable for its nature. That's inshallah next time. But I think the introduction about the Sunnah recordation is very important to see that the pitfalls of the claim that is wholesale and reliable, then the Quran is also wholesale and reliable, history is wholesale and reliable. You cannot be certain about your grandparents because your parents may have lied to you about your grandparents. Everything is wholesale and reliable. Even this building here, this house, the record in the land registry can be wholesale and reliable. Nothing can be unreliable. We must assume that these things are basically reliable and there's some mistake, there's some error, there's some fabrication, some cheating, some falsification, like the currency in the shop. If you take money from a bank, you can rely that most of it is genuine money, meaning printed by official government, which is a question mark if they are genuine in the first place. But assume this is the definition of genuine. But there will be few banknotes which have been fabricated by gangsters. Or they don't have the right to fabricate. The government has the right to cheat you, but not the gangster. But at least it's the government made money, most of it. Few will be false money there. You can't exclude that some of them are bad. There will be bad notes, but it does not mean that all the notes are bad. It doesn't work this way. The same applies for everything.
Yeah, that's a good point about the notes he's made. Yeah.
You go to the bank, take £1,000, you can't be certain that most of them are genuine.
It doesn't mean you're going
and the bank has scrutinized the people for. But there may be one note which has slipped.
You'll obviously filter out the false counterfeits.
Yes. And many other things in life that's like that. Basically, it's the basic reality is that basic things like that, like currency, like medical profession, like engineering profession, they're basically reliable, basically qualified, basically trustworthy. There will be cheats under them, they will be fabricated under them, there will be criminals under them, but does not undermine the general picture.
There's a guy called Matt Slick. He's a Christian. He debates a lot. Is he an apologetic? I'm not sure if he's an apologist. And he says the same thing. Oh, okay, he's arguing for falsehood, yeah, but he's got the same argument when he argues with the atheists when they say, "Oh, we deny that Jesus," and he goes, "Look, then you're denying history. Everything's self-certifying. Because you can't get away from it."
The claim that there's nobody called Jesus ever existed is a fabrication of other people. Why should people fabricate a person like that? And he's in a historic time frame, a certain time which we know. It's not like narrating something like
he actually talks about
must be some historic root.
He talks about the community. He goes, she goes, this
and the community was prosecuted at the time of Aaron and thrown to the lion. This historical fact, so they refer to a person in their time, not someone like
there's no proof for a person like Jesus. And he goes, well, you got. I know it sounds a bit funny. He goes, well, you got Matthew, you got Luke, you got John. But she goes, yeah, but she got stuck. She goes, yeah, but that's Matthew, Luke, and John. That's them they're testifying for Jesus, so they have an agenda. So he goes, okay, so the people who knew about Genghis Khan or Ivan the Terrible, they are of the same species. So does that mean that they've got an agenda to make him up? He goes, you can't get away with it. You have to. They're telling you that there was a guy called Jesus. They are the people at the time.
And this guy had some oddity, which made this.
Accept his call or something else.
Not accept it.
Whether you accept it or not, but they're telling you that there was a guy.
And there must be a guy because
why is it that you take
that he has done something miraculous?
People's testimony when they tell you that there was a guy existing, like in history a long time ago, you get it from your own community, don't you? So why is it you're not taking it from this community who's telling you that there was a guy who Blah, blah. And he goes, even Tacitus said that there's a God.
Is valid.
Yeah.
And he's not arguing for falsehood, because he's not arguing for a specific story. He says that the whole character, this man, is an odd one. Not everyone agree that he's odd. He did something people call miracle. Maybe he was a magician. Maybe he was doing tricks. But he must be an odd guy. He's not the run of the mill. Any Tom, Dick and Harry selling tomato in the market. Can't be. Nobody will narrate about someone else. Must be someone odd about this guy. Otherwise, why 4 guys there and hundreds of guys being thrown to the lions at their own time, believing in Jesus? Must be something. Something. What is this something? We have to ascertain. But it must be something out of the ordinary. What is it? The details will go. But at least the existence is there. Denying the existence will be a joke. You don't throw people to lions and say, we believe in Jesus and he was just a tomato seller somewhere in Palestine. Come on. It doesn't work this way. Human nature and